All right, so today we're going to talk to you a little bit about how to construct some stock platforms and stock flats. The first thing we're going to get into is talk about the tools. So we have several tools that you're going to need for these kinds of projects. You're going to need a speed square, you're going to need a tape measure, you're going to need some sort of saw, so this is our chop saw, miter saw. You're going to need a pilot bit drill, so this has a little pilot bit on it, you can see it here. And then we also will need a Phillips head drill that you can use. So you'll have two drills for all these projects. All right, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go through and you're going to find the lumber that you need. The preference is to find scrap lumber first. So you'll come over, you'll look through here and measure your pieces of wood to see if you have some scrap lumber. We're currently looking for some 3-foot pieces, and we also need to cut down some 7'9" pieces. Unfortunately, we do not have any of those in the wood rack, so we're going to go over and find other pieces of wood. All right, once you find your lumber, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to need to make a cut list. You need to know exactly how long the boards need to be. So the first one is we're going to cut down a board to 3 foot. So we'll write down that we need a 3-foot board on our scrap piece of wood that we have found to write on, or a piece of paper, whatever you find in the shop. We also need to cut down some 7'9" boards. 7'9" is our other measurement. Now the reason why that board is 7'9", we're making a 3-foot by 8-foot platform, but we have to take into account the thickness of our 2x4s. Our 2x4s are 1.5 inches thick. We need to make sure that we take that into account when doing our cut list. We also have one more measurement we have to do, and that is the board that's going to go in the middle of the platform. And that one is going to be 2'9". So at this point we have a 3-foot, a 7'9", and a 2'9" board. Now we're going to need 2 3-foot, 2 7'9", and 1 2'9". Now we're going to show you how to measure and cut. First thing you're going to do is you're going to take your tape measure, hook it on the end of your board. Make sure it's hooked well. You want to make sure that happens. You're going to measure out your different measurements. So if you come over here, you'll see that we're going to make a little mark at 3 foot. Now we have to do 2 of these. So there's our mark at 3 foot. We're also going to take our speed square. We're going to put it down. Make sure it's nice and flush against the side of the board. And we're going to make a nice straight line. Make that straight line. We're going to indicate which side we're going to do. I usually like to do a little arrow. Maybe put an X there to let me know that this piece is the piece we're not keeping. We're keeping this piece. I also will write down on the board how long this board is supposed to be. That way when I set it down, I know what's now. You're going to need to cut your lumber. First of all, you need to make sure that you have safety goggles. It's going to be really important so you don't get sawdust in your eye, lose an eye. That'd be horrible. So put your safety goggles on. Next thing you're going to do is line up your cut. So if we get in here closer, you can actually see that we have the line here. What we're going to want to do is make sure that our blade is on the side of the line that we're not keeping. Okay? Now I'm not making sure the blade's not going and all that. I'm just lining it up. Make sure it's flat against the back fence. That's important. And so now I'm going to make the cut. All right. So now if we just get on this side over here so you can see the cut, you'll see exactly what I'm doing. So you're going to watch the cut. We're going to come in. We're going to line it up like I said. We're going to start the saw at the top at full speed. It's going to get real loud. You're going to slowly go through the cut and make sure you don't rush it. Make sure that you get a nice clean cut, and if you do, then you'll minimize the splinters on the board. So now we're going to go through and show you the next few measurements. All right, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure and measure your next measurement. Now we're using the rest of the board that we had left over. We're not going to go through and take this board and make marks. That doesn't really work. It's not real accurate. So we're going to do again the same thing we did earlier. Mark it, measure it. Go ahead and make our line. Do our arrow and our X. Now we're going to go through and do the same thing on our 7'9" boards. We're going to go through, we're going to measure 7'9". So Jeremy's helping me here. He's going to put it on the end. He's my partner for this. We're going to go all the way to the end of the board, measure 7'9", mark it. Do the same thing with the speed square. Put it on here, make a nice straight line, give us our X, and that way we know where to cut it. Now we're going to repeat that for every single board that you need to do. I'm not going to show you that process because after I've shown you 2, you should be able to do it. Now we're going to go and we're going to cut one more board, and then that will be the final thing for actually doing the cutting. Then we'll move into actually putting together the material. So the first thing you want to do is you want to pilot some holes in your end boards. In this case, it's going to be our 3-foot boards that will be the end caps to our platforms that we're going to be making. So we're going to take the drill, and we're going to make 2 holes. You want to make sure that you don't get too close to the edge. Otherwise, you're going to split the wood. You're going to do that on both ends of the board, and you're going to repeat that on the other end as well. Then you're going to take your board and you're going to take some 3-inch screws and you're going to actually put those into the ends of the board. And that's going to be the next thing I'm going to show you. So the first thing you want to do is you want to pilot some holes in your end boards. In this case, it's going to be our 3-foot boards that will be the end caps to our platforms that we're going to be making. So we're going to take the drill and we're going to make 2 holes. You want to make sure that you don't get too close to the edge. Otherwise, you're going to split the wood. You're going to do that on both ends of the board, and you're going to repeat that on the other end as well. All right. Then you're going to take your board, and you're going to take some 3-inch screws, and you're going to actually put those into the ends of the board. And that's going to be the next thing I'm going to show you. All right, so now that you have your screws, you want to make sure and use screws that are coarse thread. We have fine thread and coarse thread. The coarse thread are a little bit thicker threads. You kind of see that, hopefully. Next thing you're going to do is take the screws and you're going to line up the board into the edge. You want to make sure that the edge is absolutely flush. You want to make sure that your hand is kind of out of the way so that the drill doesn't slip and catch your hand. You can clamp this if you'd like. There's some clamps that we have you can use, or you can just do what I'm doing here. The pilots actually help you drill into the wood a little bit easier, and the impact drill makes sure that you can drill in really quickly. You're going to repeat this process on all 4 corners. I'm not going to show you that, but we're going to go ahead and get it done. Frame completely built, you'll see that we have all the sides on. The next thing you're going to do is put in your middle board. This is for support. So we're going to measure from the end of this board to 4-foot center. All right. Now you're going to put at the end. Jeremy's going to hold this for me. We're going to take our pencil and make a little mark here at 4 foot. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. And we're going to make our little mark at 4 foot. You want to put it closest to the edge of where the board's going to be so that you can center it up. Now, center is, we're pretty much going to eyeball what that looks like. You can kind of figure out about where center is on that board. You can mark it if you like, but you don't have to. The next thing we're going to do is drill this in just like we did the ends. And so, centering up our pilot in the middle of where that line would be, and adding 2 3-inch screws on each side. It's important to use 2 screws so that your board doesn't turn. You want to make sure that you have nice pressure on the back of the screw, otherwise you'll slip off or you'll strip the screws out. We're going to do this on the other side, but I'm not going to show you that because I just did. So the last thing that you need to do to make a platform is you need to find a piece of plywood. We use 3/4-inch plywood to go on top of the platforms. We're going to come over here. So we have a piece kind of picked out that we found in the wood rack. We're going to measure it, make sure it's going to be 3 feet, and it's good. It does have the corners messed up, so we're going to go through and we're going to run it through the table saw. So I'm going to show you how we set up the table saw. Now, for the table saw, you may not use the table saw if you're not comfortable. Mr. Holder, Mr. Murdoch, myself, we could do this for you if you need to. And I would prefer that you get help using the table saw because it is one of the most dangerous saws in the shop. So I'm going to show you how to set it up. However, make sure you have help doing this. So now we're at the saw. So we're going to make our measurements. We're going to measure from the fence, this is called the fence, to the inside of the blade because this needs to be exactly 3 feet. If we're cutting differently, we might measure the outside of the blade. It just depends on the cut. So we're gonna measure from the fence, and we're gonna make sure it goes 3 feet. So we're gonna tap it, make it absolutely even, and make sure we're right to the edge there. And you do it on both sides. If we're off, Jeremy's helping me here tapping it. So we're good there, and we're good there. All right, then you're gonna come over, you're gonna lock the fence. We lock the fence for an extra safety measure. I come here and I put a C-clamp on ours because ours tends to move. And so that just keeps this from moving anywhere. Next thing we do is we grab our piece of plywood. So you make sure you have help with this. Plywood is pretty heavy. You want to make sure that you have 2 people working on that. You notice that when we started, we didn't plug in the saw. So Jeremy's going to go through, he's going to plug in the saw for me, because we were going through and we were making some adjustments next to the blade. And that can be dangerous. So while Jeremy's turning on the saw, we're going to come over here, get this going. So we're going to lean it down into, we need to make sure that there's no metal or anything in the path of the cut. We have one here, but it's not in the path of the cut. So we'll take that out after we get done. We just want to make sure we're aware of it, we know where it's at, and take it out. We're going to go ahead and make our cut through the saw. Jeremy's going to catch, I'm going to push it through. You notice we both have safety goggles on, which is extremely important. We're going to turn the saw on. You want to make sure that you're flat against the fence. And as we go through, I am pushing kind of at a diagonal through here. Jeremy right now should only have his hand underneath the bench. He's going to catch it. All right. So that's how you cut a piece of plywood on the table saw. Now we're going to show you how to put it on top of the actual platform frame. So now we have our plywood. We're gonna make sure that we put the best side facing up. Right now this has a nice gash in it, so that's probably not the best side to put up. So we're gonna flip it over. This side looks a little bit better. We're gonna put it on top. This is a recycled piece of wood. We've used it for something else, which is great. And so we're gonna use it for this as well. We're gonna use 1 5/8 screws to screw this down. What we're going to do is we're going to start on this end and then work our way around the lumber. And I'll kind of show you that in this next process. All right, so we have our 1 5/8 screws. Now you want to know the difference. We have 1 5/8 and we have 1 1/4. You'll notice that the 1 5/8 are a little bit longer. 1 1/4 we use for Luan, 1 5/8 we use for our plywood because it's going to go through. All right, and you can check that just by putting it next to it. If it doesn't go in very good, probably not the best screw to use. But 3 inches too long. So we're going to start in the corner. We're going to make sure that our corner is absolutely flush. So we're going to get it kind of started. We're going to flush it up. It's good right there. We're going to make sure the sides are even, kind of fill it with your fingers. Make sure your screw goes in enough that it's not sticking up. That could be a hazard with people walking. You're going to go down, you're going to do each screw down the side of this platform. Sometimes you already have holes in it and you could use those if you need to. Sometimes you don't. Now what's going to happen is Jeremy's going to go to the end of it over here and he's going to push it towards me because right now I'm not very even. So he's going to kind of push it that way. He's going to push it to his right, my left. And now it's going to be even. So after he's done that, I go ahead and screw it in. This is definitely a partner exercise. You want to make sure that it stays flush everywhere. He's going to stay on that end and I'm going to screw it down on this end and go down. So the rule is kind of put one in the corner, close to the corner, and then start feeling and seeing. So Jeremy's going to push it that way. Wait for me, keep going, keep going. Once it's flush, I put my second screw in. And I'm going to work my way around the drill. So now he's going to pull it back towards me. You might have to go back and forth. If you find that the drill you're using is not quite working the way you want, you might want to switch your drill out. This drill is causing me to possibly have a stripping issue with my screw head. All right, put it back to me a little more. You want that in? to me a little more. There we go. So that's in. We keep working our way down. Same thing, going to be a little more. And we're going to keep going about every foot or so as we move through. And we're going to go all the way to the end. Another one in the corner. Another one in the middle. And you're going to work your way around. Once you get the first 3 sides done, the last side should be pretty flush, and you should be able to just put screws in and finish it out. And that's what we're going to do. Then you finish it out. What you want to do is want to put probably at least 1 or 2 more screws down the middle. Good way to do that is you could use a speed square, or you could eyeball it if you're good at it. And make sure you have screws everywhere so it doesn't bounce on you. So that's making a platform. The next thing we're going to show you is making a flat.